and what can be done to prevent it. So based on what we know that works to tackle this problem. And for this, I am here with 3 European experts in running programs to combat cyberbullying. And I really look forward to this discussion. Every time that I speak with people that work in this field, I learn new things. So with us today, we have Cecilia Stagliano, Welfare Community Manager at Mondo Digitale. Cecilia has been promoting innovation in Italian schools for the last 18 years. She coordinates more than 100 schools that have joined the National Network of Innovation Gyms. And she is also the national contact person for the Digital Literacy Project for the over 60s, working with a program called Grandparents on the Internet, and it's based on intergenerational learning. And I think this is a very important part as well of the conversation, the role that different generations have to play. We also have Alex Holmes, who is Deputy CEO of the Diana Award, which is a legacy to Princess Diana's belief that young people have the power to change the world. I think we can all agree with that. He's the founder of peer-to-peer support program, the Anti-Bullying Ambassadors, a network of trained young people dedicated to preventing peer-on-peer violence of all types in school. And this is a program that Alex founded when age 16, after experiencing bullying himself and witnessing the impact that this can have on young people's mental health. So a very interesting story, personal story. And last but not least, we have Martin Drechsler, Managing Director of FSM, the Association for Voluntary Self-Regulation of Digital Media Service Providers in Germany. Martin has been working in the field of online child safety for 14 years, and since joining the FSM, he has been responsible for legal and technical aspects of online child protection, advising FSM members on the classification of web content, the design of parental controls, and child safety, including cyberbullying. So in total, I counted, we have my 3 panelists have a total of over 45 years of experience working in this field. That doesn't include Tito's experience and my own experience. So it's pretty impressive number of years working in the field. And I believe that we really have here the right brains to carry on this conversation. So I have introduced you, Alex, Martin, and Cecilia, but I want to also give you the opportunity to tell us more about your organization, what does your organization do to prevent cyberbullying, and what's your role there? So if I can start, Cecilia.
Thank you so much, you all, and thank you to have decided to invite Fondazione Mondo Digitale. We are really glad to be in this conversation. And you said already some of what we do. We are a non-profit organization, and we were born 20 years ago. And since the beginning, we have our goal is to take care of digital literacy. So since the beginning, since 20 years ago, we had to face this problem and many other stuff. But the cyberbullying matter has always been close to our activities, but so we have always take care of not exactly only cyberbullying, but the right way of facing technology and using technology in our everyday life. We work with students mainly and with schools all over Italy, especially all over Italy. So we believe that the new technologies can represent a social accelerator, and I can say a fuel growth. But in order to let new technology and digital skills be really that. We really need to teach students and people who use that, also elderly, as you said, the correct way. And the correct way is the simplest one. We really need always to do an ecosystem. And that's why you said about Innovation Gym, because Innovation Gym is our model. We believe that schools need to be transformed a little bit, and especially Italian education system should be transformed, and the school that now is really connected with all the external part of the society should become the gym where you practice the well-being, yourself. So we need to be equipped to get into the digital. So that's what we are going to see together today with us.
Thank you, Cecilia. I love the idea of having a gym to practice online skills. So, and you didn't mention where you're based in Italy.
Oh, sorry about that. Actually, I'm based in Rome, but I am the person in Fondazione who has the chance to travel really a lot. 2 days ago, I was in Scampia, that is a poorest part of Napoli, and a few days before I was in another area, but our main office is in Rome.
Excellent. Thank you, Cecilia. Alex, who I believe is somewhere in the UK, you tell me.
Yeah, that's right. I'm in London at the moment. And yeah, my name is Alex, and we are a legacy to Princess Diana. Predominantly, our sort of work in schools is focused in the UK and Ireland, and a little bit across some European partnerships. But the actual award that we give to young people who are change makers, that is across 100 countries across the globe, and that is recognizing young change makers who are following in Diana's footsteps. But specifically the work around behavior, that is based on this idea that young people spend on average in the UK 11,000 hours of their life at school, so a huge amount of time. And actually, if just one of those hours that child is affected by bullying, whether that is an online bullying or face-to-face, then we know that that can affect their ability to achieve, it can affect their mental health, and it can affect their relationships and their future outlook and adulthood. So we really concentrate on empowering young people in schools to learn some of the skills to not only keep themselves safe from online harms and bullying behaviors, but also to protect their peers. And we know that peer-to-peer support can be really effective and really impactful, because young people speak the sort of same language, and sometimes I think easier to look up to a peer. I think that's the same with adults. You're more likely to sort of learn and find a role model from a peer. And we really focus on that idea of training young people to upskill and challenge and shape attitudes and change behaviors as ambassadors. And it's then their job, once they've received the training and the continued support, to hopefully go about training their peers, running assemblies, coming up with safe ways to report bullying and speak out about it, and generally changing the culture. And I'm looking forward to sharing a little bit more about that as this discussion goes on.
Excellent, Alex. I love that idea of peer-to-peer support, and how young people really listen more when it comes from someone that they identify with. So we can explore that later. So Martin, from somewhere in Germany, tell us more.
Thank you, Almudena, and greetings from Berlin, actually. And thanks to Título for the invitation. It's a real pleasure to be here with you all today. Yes, the FSM is a self-regulatory organization that is concerned with child safety online. And as that, we are advising our member companies on child safety and on family friendliness of their services. So we work with them together in how to improve reporting mechanisms, for example, so users can easier find the ways to report offensive content or behavior, and also how to improve knowledge about platform rules and on how to use the services in a safe way. Together with a number of partners, we engage in projects to improve media literacy regarding really a range of topics that have to do with how young children and young people use digital media. And we provide materials for parents and for teachers, where, of course, cyberbullying continues to be an important subject. And last not least, we also run an internet hotline where users can report illegal content that they find when they're browsing the web. I have to say it's not completely focusing on behavior, but rather on illegal content that's found online. But every once in a while, cyberbullying will, of course, include illegal content, for example, offensive images or videos, or even words that have been posted online. So this can go to our internet hotline, where our experts will review and advise the reporting person, and if necessary, take the necessary steps to remove the content from the web. So this is maybe the FSM in a nutshell.
Thank you, Martin, and great to see also, like from Cecilia and Alex, we heard about working with children, working with schools. It's great to see as well that aspect, which we'll explore a bit later as well, of the role of industry in protecting children. So I'm going to move to another question, just exploring a bit more the concept of cyberbullying. Alex, you talked about supporting young people and making sure that of those very many hours that they spend at school, that they are not bullied, whether it's cyberbullied or face-to-face. I just want us to explore a bit more that concept of what makes cyberbullying special, and whether we need to treat it as a separate category, or we need to see it as part of a wider set of behaviors that we need to address.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And actually, we're having a really interesting discussion with young people at the moment about the word cyber and whether it's outdated, because I think it doesn't mean much to young people anymore, sort of cyberspace. And sometimes when you mention the word cyber to young people, they look blankly at you. So maybe there's a case for potentially thinking about the definition in the future. Yeah, I think we would describe cyberbullying as having some same principles as traditional face-to-face bullying. So we do think that it's important to define bullying in general as something that is occurring more than once. And part of this reasoning is because we know that we can face unkindness, whether that's in person or online, and hopefully we have the resilience and the tools to be able to deal with some of those instances of negativity or unkindness, and that actually bullying is something that is persistent and often pernicious, and in the case of online bullying, public as well, and any means of sort of using technology. We say to young people to go out of your way to abuse someone or threaten them or harass them using technology, not forgetting things like gaming platforms as well, could be described as online bullying. And I think there is a really important characteristics of what makes perhaps online bullying seem a little bit more difficult to deal with. And that can be the very nature of it being perhaps widespread and not just happening when you're face to face with someone. It could be very much happening about you indirect, and you may not discover it always in the moment that it's happening. And I think that whole idea of it being 24/7 as well, we know that increasingly from studies how much time young people are spending on their phones, and that can mean that actually that contact can come in at any time, and it can come and affect you right in your bedroom if you're a child, which can be a quite upsetting experience. It can be easy, I suppose, to keep maybe some of the evidence in some cases, but then there's some applications that are a little bit more anonymous. And I think we know that with online bullying, cyberbullying, that there is a degree of separation that actually very much so, because you can't see that person's eyes, you need to sort of connect with them. Sometimes young people tell us that means they forget about the human behind that device, behind that screen. And I think that can mean there's sometimes in online bullying elements a lack of sort of empathy or compassion as a result of that.
Thank you, Alex. I wonder if Cecilia and Martin, you have anything else you want to add to this?
Yes, I really agree with what Alex just said, because it's really, I really think that there is similarity bullying and cyberbullying, and so it's just almost, it starts from the same rules and then it just becomes wider. But I'm really curious to know which is the name they would like to change instead of cyberbullying. I'm waiting for that.
Yeah, they actually refer to it as online bullying more so, but yeah, it was an interesting one. It sort of took me by surprise, but you know, maybe there will be a shift eventually from cyber.
Mm-hmm. That's a very interesting thought. Martin, you wanted to come in?
Yes, thank you. I think it's also very important not to forget that the online form of bullying often is only following the offline bullying. So very often online bullying happens between people that actually know each other from school, from their job, from their work, and this is only to underline what Alex just said. I think that young people will usually not make huge difference between their online life and their offline life, and that's why it's even more important to focus on the different effects that it can have, and everything that Alex and Cecilia just said. It's something that's in the very same life of young people, but the effects are different, whether it happens in the classroom or on the schoolyard, or in your home, in your bedroom, in your bed with your phone only inches away from your face. So this is important to keep this in mind, or also when we talk about what actually to do regarding online bullying or cyberbullying. And can I add the different or the difficulties with terminology is something that we know firsthand from our name, including something of multimedia, which is also a word from almost 20 years ago. So I totally agree with Alex that we need to think about the terminology.
Can I say something, Almudena?
Yes, of course, of course.
I think this is an interesting discussion, the differences between bullying and cyberbullying. For bullying, I mean, we have a definition. It needs to be something that is intentional, is repetitive, and there is an imbalance of power. And when we look at cyberbullying or online bullying or digital bullying, it might happen unintentionally. You might not, it might start without the intention. I think of memes, for instance. Memes, they portray somebody, usually, and that's a living person that has a parent, has a mother, has a father, has sometimes has children, and we tend to desensitize ourselves, and we share that meme. Somebody is being offended, but initially it was not intended as an offense or insult or something, make fun of somebody. So cyberbullying is different from bullying in the sense that at the beginning there might not be an intention of causing harm, of humiliating somebody. The other thing is the repetitiveness. The behavior in bullying has to be repetitive, so I have to do it several times to be considered several times a day, several times a week, several times a month. And online, you might do it just once, but the fact that that content is seen by huge amounts of people, is shared, is commented, that's the repetitiveness that happens on cyberbullying. It's not the fact that it's a behavior itself that it's repetitive. Okay, The other
Yeah,
one is the imbalance of power. Sometimes there is no imbalance of power online. While on bullying, traditional bullying, you might have somebody that is stronger, a group versus a person, things like that. Online, I mean, can be a tiny guy, not strong, that might be hurting somebody that's physical, bigger than he is, because exactly what Alex was saying of anonymous applications and stuff like that. We don't always know who is the aggressor and who is the victim. And that also brings another thing, which is usually referred to bullying between pairs, peers, sorry. So, and online can be an adult making it to a children, or children to an adult. Those are differences that I think is important to be aware of.
Thank you, Tito. That's a really good way of putting it, and it builds on some of the themes that the fellow panelists have been exploring. I think that there is this anonymity, lack of intention, and lack of empathy that builds on the lack of empathy that Alex was talking about, and the role of the bystanders as well, where sometimes people just amplify this bullying and this harmful content without even realizing. So I think this really builds neatly and naturally for later in the conversation when we explore what works when addressing cyberbullying. I think we need to build that on a clear understanding of what are the factors that it makes online bullying or cyberbullying so pervasive and so damaging for young people. Before we move into exploring that, I wanted to spend a bit of time talking about the prevalence of the problem. So I know that FSM commissioned a representative survey in Germany to investigate the online safety of adolescents in Germany, aged 9 to 16, and showed that cyberbullying was one of the major concerns for young people. So, Martin, can you tell us a bit more about the research and what you found?
Yes, absolutely. So our study is called the Youth Media Protection Index and has been conducted for the second time after 2017. And this index examines how the protection of young children and young people from negative online experiences is anchored in the concerns, the attitudes, skills, and actions of parents as well as children themselves. And overall, as compared to 2017, the concerns of parents about online risks have increased, and more children have already had negative online experiences. 43% of the young people we asked have experienced cyberbullying. And what's maybe even more interesting, 36% said that others might have felt bullied by them. So they themselves were the bullies. 1 in 3 of young people said this. And both figures, as I said, have increased significantly compared to our first survey in 2017.
That's fascinating. Can I ask you, Martin, to repeat how many of the young people thought they themselves had potentially been bullies?
Yes, 36% said they think they might have been bullied. So we asked, do you think that others have felt bullied by you? So it's a very subjective thing.
Yeah.
But yes, 1 in 3 young people says, yes, well, maybe I was a bully.
That's a fascinating finding, I think, because it shows as well how, building on what Tito was saying, how there is not necessarily an unbalance of power, and people can find themselves going from being bullied to being the bully, and is fascinating the power that online technology might have in the hands of young people. I don't know whether Alex or Cecilia want to build And what do you know about the prevalence in Italy or the UK?
I also think that there is another problem, that now children and young people are scared, even if they don't really know what cyberbullying is, but they hear so much about that on TV, on radio. So technology, it's like elderly people. They don't want to use phone because there is a hacker. No, I mean, it's not always connected. That we really know to work a lot about awareness everywhere. And so it's a lack of awareness, I think. And in any case, we have, unfortunately, this cyberbullying matter is really growing in Italy. But it's a lack of awareness also of how to use the devices and the cyberspace.
Thank you, Alex.
I just want to echo those points, and I do think there's a little bit of a problem with the media and politicians painting the internet as a big sort of societal issue, and I think that doesn't sort of ring true. But also, we're just hearing a bit of typing there. Also, it actually allows those politicians to, instead of investing in school-based programs and things like mental health support, they can just blame the internet. And certainly for the UK and Ireland, like, cyberbullying has been pretty static in terms of the prevalence. It's not an epidemic. It's not, sort of out of control. And if anything, the research has showed that more young people are being affected by face-to-face bullying, and that school is much more of an unsafe place compared to the internet. And school is somewhere that has been around for a lot longer than the internet, and that we send millions of children every day, but yet unfortunately too many of them do not have a safe experience. So actually for the UK, there's sort of 1 in 5 children aged 10 to 15 have experienced one type of online bullying, but actually 38%, almost nearly half have experienced bullying behavior in person. And out of that, 72% that have experienced bullying behavior in person experienced at least some of it, who experienced it online have experienced at least some of it in school. So I think actually cyberbullying creates very few new victims. It's often a continuation of a familiar relationship, as we've described here, and a peer that you know. And I think, unfortunately, the way that we've talked about the issue has meant that children are quite fearful, and it does remain a sort of a real concern of theirs in many studies. But the research certainly suggests that the experience of bullying face-to-face in school in particular outweighs what happens online. And then when it does happen online, it's usually the two connected. So I think yeah, there is a lot that we need to do and be careful about that. And I also have in the UK, newspapers, media ringing me up desperate for cyberbullying stories because their editors think that social media and tech companies should be regulated. And when I remind them how many stories I have of actually school-based bullying, they're not interested. So I think there are some real sort of biases at play. And unfortunately that plays into fear-based education. And I think that doesn't help parents either, because then parents become quite worried about the issue rather than sort of being informed. So it's a bit of a vicious, I think, cycle.
Thanks, Alex, and a fascinating reflection about building as well on the differences between online bullying and face-to-face, that it's often when they are connected that children also experience the most negative impact of it. And I'm keen as well to explore later what role do you see for industry as well to play in promoting positive behaviors and keeping children safe. Tito, I wonder if you want to share any reflections here?
Yes, I was interested because one of the things that we've been struggling in Portugal is that, and I was wondering whether the data that Martin and Alex provided are representative of the country. Because here in Portugal, what we have is partial studies. I mean, for instance, we have UKids online study that has 2 questions on bullying or 3 questions on bullying and cyberbullying. And we have studies that are done with parts of populations, but they don't represent Portugal as a whole. So basically, in Portugal, we don't have a national diagnosis. We can't say the prevalence of bullying in Portugal is such and such, because and what types of bullying occur, where it occurs, and that sort of thing. So basically, when we don't have a diagnosis, it's difficult to have a plan of action to face the problem. And the thing is, the feeling that I increasingly have is that it's good for politics not to have a diagnosis, because that way things can stay as they are for as long as the problem does not exist, basically.
Yes, that's a good reflection, Tito. I was wondering as well, in this question about measuring the prevalence and asking young people to express whether they have felt bullied or whether they even might have bullied others. I sometimes, like, I have children that are 14 and 12, and working in this field, I sometimes get alarmed by how lightly they use the word bully and being bullied, and I wonder whether there are both effects. One is the scaremongering that Cecilia was mentioning, young people feeling scared. The other is almost like the devaluation of the concept of bullying, that we know that when it is really bullying, it really has very detrimental consequences for young people, yet young people throw that word quite lightly sometimes. I don't know whether that's, Alex, you seem to be nodding. You want to come in on that?
Yeah, no, I think we really do find that, and we're quite sympathetic to teachers and educators who, rightly so, don't want to label everything as bullying, because that's not realistic to deal with and not very fair on their sort of record and their reputation. So I think there needs to be a lot more education into the definition and helping young people understand the difference between perhaps negativity or unkindness, which we're going to face at various times of our lives, even as adults. Because, yeah, I think it is important that we don't label everything as bullying, because it means you can't deal with the really sort of serious cases. But we certainly find that in the UK that it is a sort of thrown around. And perhaps that's something about the definition and maybe the lack of weight or gravity that the word holds. I think we've seen a lot of progress with the word and the issue mental health. People seem to really understand that, but an issue like bullying has sort of been left behind a little bit, and perhaps is still seen as quite sort of old school, and needs a little bit more reflection on that. So I think it's a really good point.
Martin.
Yes, while I agree on the perspective that not everything that's unkind online is already online bullying, I think it's still a good thing that the awareness of the topic is so high, and that young people are aware of they are themselves sometimes very kind online, or anyway in any form to others, and it's important to remind them that communication and the way we interact with each other is key to our society. And I think it's the same in Germany, that the word is used very, very easily, and from a scientific point of view, it's maybe most of the time it's not even correct. But to remind young people that it's crucial on how they interact with peers, with others, with their teachers. This cannot be repeated often enough. And yes, this should not be taken as any alarmism or just the next news story. But the figures that I just mentioned also must be seen in the context of the COVID pandemic, when every kid was on their phones or on their laptops every day throughout the day. And for many students, this was a new experience. For example, the digital classroom experience was something new, and it was easy to make jokes about your teacher live with your friends. So the teacher maybe mispronounce a word or just does something funny or stupid, and it's very easy in this live situation to make fun of them, and or to make a screenshot when your colleague in class isn't performing their best or so. And it's become much more easy to be unkind, and at the same time it's been discussed very widely, and this, I think this is still okay. And yes, we shouldn't go around and say, well, drama, everything is coming to pieces. Totally agree that we shouldn't over pronounce this, and yes, from a scientific point of view, we need to make sure that it's something that is simply not nice and being not nice to others, and other forms of behavior can be bullying. But yet I like the idea, or I like the notion that we have a high awareness, and we need to remind ourselves and everybody that communication is a key for our societies.
Thank you, Martin. I'm just going to move us to just exploring the why. Why are young people being targeted by bullies? Why are they bullied? And what do we know about whether there are some groups that are more vulnerable than others? Cecilia, I wonder if you can take that.
Yes, and if you allow me, I just wanted to stop our attention on something. And if we consider, before answering your question, if we consider that there is a great fear of uncertainty since there is the digital around us. And it's the first time in the history of education where we have something that students had together with their teacher. So usually we went to school and there was the teacher who knew everything and we had to learn from him or her. And now, since there is the digital matter, students are the native digital. So we think that they know more than their teacher. And I think that this is some part of the origin of this big issue. And if we also consider the cyberbullying, it's like just the tip of an iceberg. And that help us and give us really, it's likely a road sign where we have to go. It means that behind that, we exactly know what we have to do. So we exactly know the way we have to go. Under the cyberbullying, there is what you just said, lack of communication and lack of knowing how to use these devices. So we have to reinforce that, because and students think that just that I have a new phone, I can do whatever and I can learn from Wikipedia or what. No, it's not that. We are really focused on prevention, so more on that. So I can more speak about prevention than on the other thing. So we really need to build a system that teacher and student to learn together how to use the technology. It's just a tool. It's just a tool, and it's just it's like the salt. When you cook, you don't have to put too much salt. So when you learn, you don't have really to use too much technology, just the technology you need. And probably phone, it's not the right technology. You need something else. You need a cloud, you need something else. So we really have a huge opportunity that we can learn together. We have to learn together. That's why we want to have a gym, that schools become gym, because we have to learn together, and teacher still need to be our trainer, because they need to give us where we have to go, but we have to walk together. And probably the students, we have to allow students to be our teacher in how do I use this kind of device, because they get quickly into the use. So we have to reinforce this alliance between students and teachers. So since tools are different, schools need to work different, and society needs to give a little bit a different kind of solution. But the problem is that technology goes very fast. Now we are speaking of metaverse, and human being is not a robot. We are not going that fast. We need to slow down, because as we slow down and use and feel the technology, we can really use and we can do unplugged things. We teach robotic in an unplugged way. We really need to do unplugged, and we need to become like, I say craftsman, farmer of the digital, craftsman of the digital. We need to use our body and technology. We need to the first thing we need to do is to think that technology, the best that can do, it can help disability. So we can have people that don't have a harm, so just go all together and build a robot so that he can have a new harm. So we have to use technology especially for inclusion and not to going too fast. And if we help children and teacher to build things for the inclusion, then we will all go together at the same time. So I forgot your question, but because
but you have naturally has been a natural segue into my next question, which was also like what works when and how do we need to build programs that work to prevent online bullying. And I think your point, if I can summarize as well, is that we need to work together, children and teachers, and also empower teachers, but also it being not only about the technology itself, but the behaviors that we bring to that technology.
Yes, the well-being. I mean, we have to start again from the basis. How can a human being be happy, be safe? And then technology can help us in doing all that stuff. And also here, and then also the company can do something. So we really need to work in an ecosystem way.
Thank you, Cecilia. I wonder whether I'm going to pass it on to Alex as well, who maybe can bring the perspective of the peers and the role that peers can play in effective programs, in addition to empowering teachers and the school environment. Alex.
Yeah, I think too often we don't actually speak to young people about their views or ideas on this. So a typical example of that is every school usually has a policy around bullying, and usually they'll have again, another outdated word, an acceptable electronic use policy. What does that mean? But again, most young people have not shaped that or created it. So it's not had their input. It's not child friendly. And I think that is, again, is a big sort of example of the importance of young people's voices when you're giving them some suggestions about how to behave and how to conduct themselves. It's really important for them to buy in and to help shape that policy. We really believe in giving young people some of that power and that responsibility. That's why we call them anti-bullying ambassadors. They have a title, they have a job, they have training, and they're supported by the adults in their school. And I think we know that for something like bullying prevention, a whole school approach is really important. And that's the idea that it's young people it's educators, and it's also parents reinforcing the messages around safety and being part of a program. Because actually, if we don't tackle each of those three important groups, then we know that things can fail a little bit. I think educators and adults do have a difficult task with, perhaps keeping up with technology, and that's why co-creating things, young people and educators and adults together, coming up with workshops, sharing experience can be really, really important, because I find it hard as a 34-year-old to keep up with some of the apps that are just sort of really, really done well, like Be Real app and so on. I've only just joined that one, but it can be quite difficult to catch up with that. So I think it's really important to come up with opportunities for young people to have dialogue, to have conversations, because it can be hard for adults to approach that without the fear of perhaps not knowing or worried that they might look a bit silly because they don't understand the technology. And actually, all of us are learning together. So yeah, I think that the schools that we work with that have been the most effective at preventing online bullying and bullying are probably the ones that have put young people at the heart of it, and have also worked at it over a period of time, because changing behaviors and changing cultures isn't easy. And actually, you need to create an ethos where people want to speak out about this, or they understand the issue, and that can take a bit of time. So I think a big message is for schools that, don't expect things to change very quickly. If anything, incidents may go up because you're raising awareness of that topic, and that's not a bad thing. But definitely make sure you think about how you include young people, because the messages that they give out are far more likely to be received even more positively if it is young people leading it, and then backed up by adults is always our advice.
Thanks, Alex. If I can ask a follow-up question, can you remind us how many anti-bullying ambassadors you've trained, how you select and train them, and how you work with the schools?
Yeah, so this is a program that I sort of started 10 years ago after my own experience. So now we've trained a lot of young people, almost 50,000, and the program is in about 5,000 schools, and the government back it, and we've had some great evaluations with the likes of Demos and other think tanks that have evaluated it. But I think, I was going to answer probably your next question soon about industry. I won't yet, but there is some really, really good programs out there. And what we're trying to do, you can find the information on antibullyingpro.com, is give a lot of these resources and programs and good practice and ideas to schools for free, because it doesn't actually cost very much, these ideas, but they are effective, we think. And that's why we're trying really hard to train young people as anti-bullying ambassadors, whose job it is then to think about how they tackle it. And that point about selection, even though I was bullied, we don't encourage a team of just bullied young people. In fact, that's probably not going to be very effective. Instead, we are looking for people on this anti-bullying team who have experience of bullying, perhaps have participated in bullying in the past, but have changed their behavior, and perhaps are bystanders to bullying. It really takes a whole school community to make a difference with this subject. But if your anti-bullying ambassadors are in assembly presenting, and you are sitting there and you can't identify with them, then it's not going to be as strong. So we really look for 2 young people from every year group, and then they take that through with them throughout the school, and they engage others. So we found that that's been really important, and to think about making sure that you reflect the whole school population in your choice of ambassadors.
Thank you, Alex. Martin, I wonder if you have any reflections on what makes a program successful and what we know.
Yes, thank you. So I can absolutely agree with everything that Alex just said, and I would like to add a fantastic example from Germany, where young people have founded their own association in order to help others who might have been victims of cyberbullying or have experienced difficult situations, because sometimes young people still struggle and say, well, okay, what can I do? And yes, I can go to parents, I can go to teachers, but it's maybe easier to talk to my friends or to talk to other people my age who maybe have had similar experiences. And we have seen this association being very successful in Germany, backed powerfully by a large telco, which helped to spread the word and to make this association very visible. And I will share the internet address in the chat in a minute. And of course, teachers have a vital role to play in this. However, this is just another thing that we ask teachers to take care of. And usually their timetable is already fully packed with everything that they have to include in their classes. And having to address bullying is just another thing that they have to tackle. And we are trying to support them with materials that are very easy to use for them. So it's low threshold help to include this topic in their classes and have ready to use materials for even smaller portions of the day or for a week or for a project day. So this is what we're trying to help teachers with. And of course, parents must not be forgotten. Parents are always an example for their kids, whatever the relationship between parents and their children might be. But children will always look at their parents and see and recognize how parents behave and how they communicate. And if you see your parents being rude online, this makes something with you as a young person. So we need to remind parents that they always are role models for their children, and at the same time always have to be open for a dialogue, always have to be ready for discussions. And parents do not have to know every service or every challenge or every phenomenon online. That's not what we ask of parents, but parents must be open and must understand that media education is only part of education, or is as well education as everything else in the upbringing of children. So that the media thing isn't the cyber thing, isn't isn't really something special, but belongs to their normal job of being a good parent.
Thank you. That's a great reflection, Martin. Cecilia, talking about the school gyms, how many school gyms do you have? Can you remind us?
Yes, okay. We have two different kinds of school gym. We have 100 that are that have the mindset of the gym. So they need to think that when you start a subject, you have to connect with the other. And then we have now 10 out of that we have increased their instrumental, I don't know, like we have built Fab Lab in them. So thanks to some grant and some money that we could have from different grants, we have built Fab Lab, so laser cut, 3D printer, and another technology that, and we do activity with the teacher and students together and with different subject, sorry, all together. But first, schools have to join in saying, okay, we want to join that model. When they show us that they have joined this model, that they can already run with what they have in school, because it's just a matter, first of all, is a matter of thinking the learning process differently, then we can invest and findings and found with different grants. And they are, we have one in Milan, in Rome we have actually 7 and 6, sorry. And then we have Palermo, Reggio Calabria, and Bari. So this is the one that we are following, and any school can join and we will help them to grow. But they first have to join the model.
Thank you, Cecilia. And I think throughout the conversation, I think that the pillars that I take from this, and Tito, I don't know whether you want to also build on the experience in Portugal, but it seems to me very important to work to empower the teachers without overwhelming them, but bringing them as part of the conversation, but also working with young people, as Alex was saying, so empower them to shape the conversation and to lead that conversation as well. And the role of parents, as Martin was saying, as role models and being able to continue this conversation. So I believe that the most effective program would try to address those 3 planks of the lives of children, which are critical to building the social fiber that will also help them to feel more protected and more secure, and to know where to draw help as well. Tito, I wonder if you want to comment on that.
Yes, I love to hear Alex and all the other panelists, but what Alex said resonated with me very much, because it's what we're trying to do in Portugal. The topic of bullying and cyberbullying has been addressed from top to bottom. Usually is adults telling children, you need to do this, you need to do that, and whatnot. And usually it starts with things like, don't do this, don't do that. You know, it's a very negative speech. So I agree with what has been said. We need an holistic approach, an holistic and systematic approach. So we need to involve families, schools, and the community at large. For instance, in the sessions that we do in Portugal, we are involving the health services that serve that particular school, child protection service that serve that particular school, police law enforcement that serves that particular school. It needs to the municipality that that school is integrated on. So it needs to be an holistic approach one way. Then children need to be heard. And if we want them to join the effort of preventing and tackling bullying, we have to hear what they have to say. They have to shape, as Alex was saying, the policies. And in order to do that, we need to give them a voice. We need to, and the work that's usually done is adults directing children, and children know very well what the adults want to hear. So they become parrots. They repeat what adults tell them to do. And we need to change that. So we need to start an approach that goes from the bottom, from the students, so that they get buy-in. It's something that is created by them for them and not created by adults for them. The other thing we also feel is that the approach needs to be systematic. In Portugal, we have lots of people doing awareness sessions for 300, 200, 500 students. So these organizations go to a school, they do an awareness session, and they go on, and what teachers tell us is nothing is left on the school. There's not a system, there's not a program that we can follow. So one awareness session doesn't bring much. We need to have a systematic approach. And the only way to do that, as Martin was also saying, teachers are already filled with jobs and things to do and tasks and whatever, is to have children leading that program. Unfortunately, in Portugal, the team that Alex was saying is formed mostly by teachers. Teachers that represent health programs, teachers that represent media awareness programs, and that has to change. The majority needs to be made the team needs to be formed by students, not by teachers, you know. And adults have a role. We can guide the process. We can direct the process. We can work as facilitators, not as leaders of the process. Children need to lead that, and they need to be given a voice according to the Declaration of Children's Rights on Article 12, that states exactly that children have the right to be heard on matters that affect, and this definitely affects.
Absolutely. Very well said, Tito. We have talked about schools, we have talked about parents, we have talked about the role of children. Being here representing industry, I'll be amiss if I didn't put it to you as well. What role do you think, what more do you feel that the industry has to do to ensure that children feel safe? And I was pleased to hear as well that you all came from a position of not scaremongering and making sure that children can enjoy the benefits that technology has to offer. But what would be your wish when it comes to the role of industry? Alex, you wanted to say it before, so I'm offering it to you now to get us started with this topic.
Great, yeah, I think in particular countries, I think industry do a really good job at supporting school-based initiatives. So the Anti-Bullying Ambassador Program has support from a number of the technology companies, and I'm also a big fan because many of our schools also use Google's Be Internet Legends program, and I think sometimes that contribution gets lost in the negative headlines around tech companies, particularly when government are talking about the companies. So I think, yeah, definitely, you know, more sort of continued investment. I would love to think about how some of these models and these signature investments could perhaps be sort of scaled more, and you know, how we could you know, enable more schools to participate without perhaps needing the visits that a lot of the program, the face-to-face visits that a lot of the program can contain. I think for me, I would really love to see industry. We've talked about sort of that whole idea about a community, train general members, general users of their platform in safety. You know, I think that the companies are always very good at marketing their product, but less so at marketing safety as a topic and enabling people to get involved in the issue of safety. So I would love to see some sort of course or quiz or badge, or, you know, some sort of gamification where a user of a platform could learn and earn their sort of accreditation to show that they are actively tackling cyberbullying on the platform, or they know how to report, or they know how to support a peer. I haven't seen any sort of companies, maybe apart from Discord, offer sort of something that you know, is a real incentive to be a good member of that platform. And I think absolutely the companies, if anyone's capable of doing it, these technology companies are, because they know how to make things work and develop products and tools. So I'd really like to see industry go out of their way to offer training to users. Too often safety is sort of hidden away in the back end, in the settings. It's not clear how to engage with that topic. So I'd love to see more sort of thinking around that.
Thank you, Alex. And I think, Martin, you've worked with industry and with companies like Google as well on this question of how to report, how to be more aware, how to make the tools more visible to users. Can you comment on that?
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, cyberbullying happens on online platforms. So that's why the platforms have a large share of the responsibility. And the good news maybe is that we see that this responsibility is accepted more than before recently. Platforms such as TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, or YouTube are really working to improve the technical measures that they have. So reporting options are easier to find, and most of the topics provide education on the topic, or provide materials, or in their help sections, provide information on what you can do if you've become a victim of cyberbullying, and also about the rules that are valid on a platform. So I think it's really important for companies to point out what is accepted in their services and what is not, and this information shouldn't be hidden somewhere in the fine print, but should be users must always be aware of what's acceptable on such platforms. And also we see that some of the platforms provide materials for parents, because usually parents aren't using the same services as their kids do. And we hope and we encourage parents that they are engaged and that they are interested in what their kids do. And I don't have to be I don't have to be the typical TikTok user in order to understand what my kid does on TikTok. And I should be interested in how this service works and what my kid finds interesting at this. And so this information should be available for parents, very easy to find. And also maybe which settings parents can set, or which options parents can use in order to make the using experience for their kids a bit safer. So this is also information that's very relevant and must be should be very easy to find. And as I said, a number of industry partners and mobile phone providers actually have campaigned on the topic and have sponsored studies in recent years. And once again, it's more important, or it's really important to provide a sustainable approach. So it cannot be something that we just try because we have money over, and this is a one-off. So this is also what to echo what Alex just said. We need to make this more scalable and use the experience that we have. And of course, industry can always provide support for hotlines and helplines by making them more visible, but also, of course, by providing financial support. And maybe finally, one important finding of our Youth Media Protection Index, we need to strengthen the cooperation. And the scientists wrote there should be a community of responsibility from parents and media and politics and regulators. So there isn't this finger pointing to you are responsible and you have to do. No, it's us, it's all of us. And of course, industry has a very important role to play. And I'm glad that they accept this responsibility more than ever before.
Thank you, Martin. Cecilia.
Yes, my point of view is always conditioned by the fact that we are taking care of young people in training. So the role of a company, I think it's really crucial, and we can help them to be part, as we were saying, of the ecosystem, and companies should become more people. I mean, young and the youngest should meet people that are in the company and should learn what are their job, what do they do, and maybe they can also be can be part of the process with the company to build the new solution, because company are for the youngest the future. Maybe they are going to join that company in the future, and they should know exactly also what you can do for the world in that company. And so it's really important that the company is not only a name. I mean, Google is plenty of people and you are one of them, and so it's very important that we are all seated at the same table. And you were saying very well that youngest should be listened. So the first thing that company can do is to listen to people who have to be taken care. So and okay, of course they can support program, but we should build together this program and construct them together.
Thank you, Cecilia. Tito, I wonder if you have a reflection on what more can industry do?
Yeah, I think our guests have touched the points that really need to be addressed. Visibility of reporting functions and features on safety need to be made more visible. One of the things that we realize when we go to schools, not so much with students, but namely with parents, is that they don't know that certain features exist. And we've been teaching parents how to use them, where those features are, and so forth. So that means that they need to be made more visible, more awareness that needs to be invested in that. Also, the topic that Martin addressed is relevant, and also Cecilia, when they say that the industry needs to hear us. So I think those topics were very well addressed. One thing that I would add is the technology, and sometimes I see that and do a comparison with copyright. Industry is very apt at blocking things related to copyright. I wish they were as fast as blocking content related to cyberbullying as they are on blocking content related to copyright. But I know that that's work that's not really easy, because there's things like freedom of speech involved in there. But I think that's an area where industry should really invest in. I think they are investing in that.
Thank you. And if I can bring to a close this wonderful discussion, I think I've learned loads, and it's been great to hear the different perspectives. But to finish off, just wonder if you had a magic wand and you could change one thing about the way we currently think about tackling cyberbullying, or how we go about tackling cyberbullying, what would be your wish? Martin, I'll start with you.
Thank you. Well, since we might not actually be able to end cyberbullying, we should not try to trick ourselves into a notion that this is a task that we can complete or that we can finish, because every new generation of young people who use digital media, and every single boy or girl who enters the digital world, will make new experiences, good and bad. And also every parent has a responsibility to be a good role model for their child, and be prepared to stand by their side. Parents should accept that they will never be able to know everything, but be always a partner for their kid, and be open for discussions. And finally, maybe, yeah, I've just touched on this, but instead of finger pointing towards others, we all should accept our very own personal responsibility in this topic, and be good models to others, and engage in this community of responsibility.
Thanks, Martin. I think you took 3 wishes, which it's more of an Aladdin lamp than a magic wand, but I'll grant those to you. Cecilia.
If I had a magic wand, I would like that we go in a world where when you use a device or technology, you are never alone. You are always in a square with other people. So we need that schools are open 24 hours. And so we need that we have the habit of using technology with someone else around, whoever. So I think that if we start again being in a square, as we used to be in the past, walking, this will slow down naturally.
Thank you. Alex.
Yeah, maybe sort of coordination, global coordination. So I would love to see more organizations like the ones on this call, and perhaps industry, help coordinate more of a global response, and perhaps pull together good practice, and maybe even fund sort of global toolkits and so on. So yeah, perhaps that global response to this issue, and more of industry, non-profits, governments coming together to look at this as a group.
Thank you. And Tito, your wish.
Thank you. Looking into Portugal, I would like every school district to have a tool in which they could diagnose bullying and cyberbullying within their school. If that tool was the same across the country, we could compare it, and each school would have a diagnosis, and from that diagnosis they could draw an action plan for the year. Next year they could diagnose it again, draw another action plan to see what worked, what not, and they could implement it again. So that's my wish.
Thank you, Tito, and thanks all my fellow panelists. Since I'm the chair, I'm gonna grant myself also a wish. And my wish is, like building on what Martin said, that maybe we will never finish bullying or cyberbullying, but my wish is that every child knows where to go if they experience cyberbullying, or if they witness cyberbullying, that they know what to do. So feeling empowered to identify the problem and have where to ask for help or how to be of help to others. And I'm really encouraged by this conversation, because seeing experts across different countries in Europe that are working day in, day out to make sure that children feel empowered and that they have the right conditions around them, from schools, from parents, from the wider community, and holding also industry to account, I think we might get there. And I'm really hopeful. So thank you very much to Alex, to Cecilia, and to Martin for all your thoughts and your time and your insights. And thanks a lot for Tito de Moraes for having us here and giving us the opportunity to have this very important discussion. Thank you. Thank you.
Let me also, we're approaching the end of our session, so our thanks, sincere thanks to you, Almudena, for chairing this panel, and to our guests. Thank you, Cecilia, Alex, and Martin. It was great to hear your perspectives on what's working on preventing and tackling cyberbullying. We are now going to proceed to the closing of the event. This has been a full month of sessions held every weekday from 9:30 p.m. to 11:30. So today, this is the 20th session that we have organized this month. So it's been really intensive, and we're going to close the event in Portuguese. Feel free to stay or leave if you have other things to attend, which I believe you do. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for sharing your knowledge and experiences with us. And we hope to see you again down the road sometime, somewhere, and be able, as Alex said, to cooperate on a deeper level. So thank you, and wish you all well, and see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
And now for our closing ceremony, which will be conducted in Portuguese, I ask my fellow organizers, Cristiano and Sonia, to join me.
Então,
Sorry.
espetacular.
É mesmo. E estamos a chegar ao final da 4ª Global StopCyberbullying Telesummit. Eu ainda me lembro bem das edições anteriores, não é? Em que tudo começou em 2019 com uma ideia assim um bocado maluca, não é? De juntar, perdão, o facto de em outubro se celebrar o mês da cibersegurança e em alguns países celebrar também o mês da prevenção e de combate ao bullying, surgiu esta ideia de juntar as duas coisas numa telesummit a que o Luís e a Sónia rapidamente aderiram à ideia. E em 2019, portanto começámos antes da pandemia, tivemos 16 sessões com 22 oradores de 6 países, tivemos oradores do Brasil, do Canadá, dos Estados Unidos, de França, Portugal, do Reino Unido, totalizando mais de 20 horas de formação. Portanto, já lá vão 4 anos, não é? Isto com a pandemia faz com que o tempo parece que passe mais depressa, a gente perde um bocado a noção do tempo. E depois veio 2020, não é, Sónia?
Oh meu Deus, o 2020 foi uma aventura. Portanto, 2019 foi a estreia, de facto, e foi uma boa estreia pré-pandémica, e em 2020 ficámos muito inspirados. E,
eu diria demais.
Foi mesmo uma loucura. Foi a nossa segunda edição, a edição mais intensa que tivemos até hoje, em 2020. Tivemos 35 sessões e, portanto, relativamente à primeira edição, foi mais do dobro. Portanto, mais do dobro. E tivemos, como tivemos palestrantes e oradores de variados locais do planeta, tivemos que nos adaptar aos horários e tínhamos edições às 8 da manhã, à 1 da tarde, às 6 da tarde e às 9h30. Não todos os dias, todas as sessões, mas para termos 35 sessões em dias de semana, houve alguns dias que tivemos 2 e 3 sessões em simultâneo, a estas diferentes horas. E, portanto, foi no sentido de conseguirmos conciliar as diferenças horárias entre os vários países que participaram. E, portanto, tivemos 37 oradores de 16 países, desde a Austrália, Brasil, Canadá, Chile, Nova Zelândia, Japão, Itália, Reino Unido, Zimbábue. Portanto, tivemos aqui os 5 continentes, se não me falha a memória, tivemos os 5 continentes presentes. E cerca de 50 horas de formação. Portanto, foi de facto um grande salto, e foi um salto que nós não repetimos com esta intensidade porque foi quase desumano, mas foi extraordinário, do ponto de vista das aprendizagens e da comunicação que se estabeleceu e das pontes que se estabeleceram com os variados oradores e com as variadas organizações. E tivemos na última sessão desse ano, uma sessão Halloween também muito diferente e muito divertida, que hoje também é dia de Halloween, e portanto relembro com muito carinho essa sessão. E depois passámos para a terceira sessão em 2021, certo?
É verdade. O ano passado tivemos 21 sessões com 29 oradores de 10 países, da Argentina, da Austrália, do Brasil, Espanha, Estados Unidos, França, Grécia, Itália, Portugal e Reino Unido, totalizando mais de 30 horas de formação. Portanto, também um ano intenso. E um ano intenso em que contou já com a colaboração da Cristiane numa sessão com uma oradora da Austrália e depois com a sessão na sessão de encerramento que fizemos que a Cristiane que fosse a moderadora da sessão de encerramento, não é?
Pois foi o meu primeiro pezinho aqui na Telesummit, e este ano...
Molhar os pés, não é? Foi para molhar os pés para ver a temperatura da água.
Da água, isso foi no ano passado, molhar os pés. Este ano
Exato.
foi um mergulhar intenso até... Mas foi uma experiência espetacular. Eu adorei mesmo estar a ajudar-vos, e estarmos aqui todos a fazer esta Telesummit. E este ano as coisas tomaram assim uma perspectiva, uma dimensão maior que as outras todas, o que é mesmo muito bom, e porque nós queremos mesmo que estas temáticas cheguem ao maior número possível de pessoas, não é? Então nós tivemos mais de 1.350 pessoas inscritas este ano. Foram 20 sessões, com 35 oradores de 9 países. Alemanha, Brasil, Canadá, Estados Unidos, França, Itália, Nigéria, Portugal, claro, tivemos bastantes de Portugal, e também tivemos do Reino Unido. Foram 30 horas de formação. E este ano fizemos assim algumas coisas diferentes, não é? Dos outros anos. Fizemos um site específico para estarmos aqui com as inscrições e com o programa e com os oradores, os currículos dos oradores e assim. Fizemos algumas automações do processo, principalmente dos processos de comunicação, que eu espero que tenha resultado bem. Depois também vamos querer o feedback das pessoas que estão-nos aqui a acompanhar. O que é que tivemos mais? Tivemos tradução simultânea, né? Tivemos o Hugo connosco a fazer tradução simultânea
das sessões em inglês, foi a primeira vez, e eu acho que também foi muito bom, que assim conseguimos chegar a mais gente com estes oradores
Agora, desculpa interromper,
não, tudo bem,
não
claro.
dizer ao Hugo, se ele ainda aí estiver, para ligar a câmara e cumprimentar também quem está, para as pessoas ficarem a saber quem é que nos esteve a ajudar na tradução simultânea das sessões em português, para português. Foi um prazer poder contar com a colaboração dele.
Pronto, se quiser, se estiver ainda por aí, aparece aqui no ecrã. Tivemos também pela primeira vez uma media partner, não é? Revistas, jornais, televisão, contamos com essa questão, mais promoção nas redes sociais, e podemos ver que as pessoas a avaliarem as sessões em que estavam, não é? Cada sessão, e vamos pedir também para fazer uma avaliação global do processo em si, portanto, preparem-se aí, vocês estão a nos ouvir, preparem-se que vão receber mais um link para uma avaliação, ok? E ajudem-nos aqui, porque é muito importante nós sabermos isto. E este ano tivemos mensagens de abertura, não é? Do Presidente da República e do Presidente da Assembleia da República. Também foi muito bom de contarmos com essas duas pessoas, não é? Para estarem aqui a abrir o programa. Foi assim um ano também trabalhoso.
Mesmo, não é? E já estamos mesmo a terminar, e queríamos deixar-vos com algumas dicas, observações ou recomendações neste domínio. Acho que esta última sessão foi muito interessante, tivemos perspectivas de muitos países, nomeadamente da Alemanha, do Reino Unido e de Itália, e eu queria reforçar aquilo que disse: nós precisamos de facto ter um diagnóstico nacional da situação. As escolas em Portugal ainda não têm, deveriam ter, e algumas eventualmente já terão, políticas anti-bullying, de prevenção e de combate ao bullying. Era bom que essa prática se generalizasse. E as tecnologias também nos podem ajudar, como vimos na sessão, por exemplo, com o Mathieu Boutard, que nos deu essa ideia. E terminar também dizendo, e que ficou patente agora nesta sessão, da importância de envolver as crianças e os jovens, para que isto não seja, digamos, uma abordagem dos adultos para as crianças, mas sim das crianças para os adultos. Sobretudo a intervenção do Alex foi muito pertinente a esse nível, tem uma experiência brutal no Reino Unido, como vimos, com 5.000 escolas, mais de 50.000 embaixadores formados nessa questão. E passo-te para ti, Sónia, para deixares as tuas dicas, observações e recomendações.
Obrigada, Tito. É assim, eu gostava de pegar na primeira imagem da Almudena, gostei muito que achei que foi a dica da Almudena no final, foi uma dica muito sensata e eu penso que cada vez mais muito realista, porque nós andamos nesta luta há anos, nesta Telesummit há 4, mas há muito mais anos que andamos nesta luta e nestas questões de combate ao bullying e ao cyberbullying, e na realidade sabemos que eles continuam. E portanto eu acho que a minha dica era estarmos cientes de que de facto o fenómeno não vai desaparecer. Não vai desaparecer, não quer dizer que se intensifique, mas que não vai desaparecer e que é preciso estarmos cientes. E, portanto, o primeiro passo, de facto, é o diagnóstico, não é? Mas a sensibilização para isto. E a sensibilização passa por coisas muito simples, como o envolvimento dos alunos. Nós vimos noutras sessões também a importância de os envolver nos próprios planos de prevenção e nos próprios planos de combate, nas próprias intervenções. Portanto, não é só ouvi-los, que é fundamental, encontrar um espaço para os ouvir, e isto que a Almudena disse é importante, que é os miúdos têm que saber que, e nós também arranjarmos os mecanismos para que quando as coisas acontecem, eles saibam onde é que se podem dirigir, com quem podem contar, quem podem mobilizar e que ferramentas é que têm à sua disposição. E acho que uma dica que eu acho que é simples e é realista também, é nós transmitirmos aos nossos miúdos, sejam eles alunos, sejam eles nossos filhos, de que na realidade nós todos os dias nos confrontamos com pessoas diferentes, muito diferentes, e eu não estou a falar naquelas diferenças que falamos, étnicas, religiosas, não, estou a falar em diferenças de estilo, de comunicação, de temperamento, de maneira de ser, de maneira de estar, de princípios que valorizamos, etc. E não gostamos de todas, é verdade, nós não gostamos de todas as pessoas, não gostamos de todos os nossos colegas, não simpatizamos com todos os colegas com os quais trabalhamos. E isso é uma realidade, não vale a pena estarmos aqui a escamotear. E, portanto, o que eu penso que é necessário é aceitar que isso é natural ao ser humano, transmitir isso, essa naturalidade aos nossos miúdos, aos nossos filhos, aos nossos alunos, mas, acima de tudo, transmitir também que, independentemente disso, é fundamental respeitarmos. Portanto, se nós aceitarmos, olha, não simpatizo com este, não simpatizo com aquele, se puder não estou nos mesmos sítios e eventualmente até nos mesmos grupos de trabalho, mas não é por isso que eu sinto legitimidade em desrespeitá-lo, em persegui-lo, em ameaçá-lo, em divertir-me à custa dele. E, portanto, isso já é um desrespeito pela humanidade dos outros. Portanto, a humanização é fundamental, mas aceitarmos de que, na realidade, não temos que nos dar bem com toda a gente, nem temos que gostar de toda a gente, nem sermos amigos de todos. Temos que aceitar que isso não é viável. Mas há um limite entre aquilo que é respeitar e desrespeitar o outro. Esta seria a minha dica.
Sem dúvida, Sónia, sem dúvida. E essa questão é algo que se aprende em casa, não é? Aprende-se também em casa, ou deve-se aprender primeiro que tudo em casa, não é? E as minhas dicas aqui, eu vou deixar aqui umas dicas que são 7 passos para a parentalidade digital positiva, que é algo que nós damos aos pais no nosso workshop, os pais digitais, porque é uma forma de os pais poderem efetivamente tornarem-se melhores pais digitais. E nós estamos aqui a falar de cyberbullying, e o cyberbullying vai ter com bullying também, portanto, se nós fizermos isto em termos digitais, também vamos fazer isso em termos da nossa vida offline, se posso chamá-la assim, né? O online e o offline, não é? E estes 7 passos são muito simples, e são muito simples também de implementar. Haja tempo também, haja vontade e queira-se estar com os filhos para se fazer estas coisas. E quais são estes passos? O primeiro é fala com os teus filhos. É uma coisa, parece tão básica, não é? Mas muitas vezes os pais esquecem-se de falar com os filhos daquilo que os filhos gostam de falar. E os filhos adoram a falar daquilo que fazem na sua vida digital, não é? E o falar aqui também é estarem abertos para ouvirem os filhos, sem julgamentos, sem perderem a cabeça, porque é muito normal, não é? Nenhum pai gosta de ver nenhum filho sofrer, nenhum pai também gosta de saber que o seu filho faz os outros sofrerem, não é? Então, se um filho vem dizer, pai, eu fiz isto, muitas vezes os pais perdemos a cabeça, não é? E começamos a mandar vir, como é que foste capaz, onde é que tinhas a cabeça, E isto faz com que os filhos não queiram falar com os pais. Portanto, aqui é conversar com os filhos, fala com os teus filhos, põe-te aberto, não é? E o segundo passo, educa-te. Ou seja, os pais também têm que saber o que é que se passa, saber o que é que se passa na tecnologia, saber o que é isto do bullying, do cyberbullying e o que podem fazer neste sentido. Usar controles parentais, também já foi falado aqui um pouquinho sobre isto. Não é a varinha mágica. Há pais que pensam que os controles parentais que vão resolver tudo, não resolvem tudo, mas também podem ser uma grande ajuda, principalmente ali numa faixa etária mais novos, digamos assim, não é? A questão das regras, ter regras do uso da internet, ter regras de boa convivência, ter regras em casa e fazê-las cumprir, como é óbvio, não é? Também é importante os pais seguirem os filhos nas redes sociais, naquilo que os filhos vão fazendo, conforme eles vão entrando nas redes sociais. Também é bom os pais fazerem-se amigos e ver o que é que eles estão a fazer, mas é claro, não é estar a hostilizá-los ali, nem estar uma perseguição, nem estarem sempre a comentar, e algumas questões que também são importantes. Depois, explorar e partilhar e divertirem-se com os filhos também no que diz respeito à vida dos filhos online, não é? Isto é uma parte importante da vida dos filhos, o que eles fazem online. É bom que os pais estejam ali com eles e também partilhem esses momentos com eles, que assim também conseguem perceber-se melhor, não é? Estarem mais atentos ao que é que se passa com os próprios filhos e o que é que eles estão a fazer também, não é? E por último, e é o último, mas não é o menos importante de todo, que é serem um bom modelo de digital, não é? Ou seja, daquilo que os pais fazem, não é? A educação. Os filhos aprendem mais pelo exemplo dos pais do que pelo aquilo que os pais dizem. Portanto, é muito importante os pais também serem bons exemplos, que é muito bonito a gente dizer não faças isto, não faças aquilo, e depois os pais estarem numa rede social a mandar vir com o árbitro do jogo da equipa deles não se portou bem, quer dizer, temos que ser mesmo bons exemplos digitais. Portanto, acho que estas 7 passos para uma parentalidade digital positiva é algo que os pais poderiam olhar para isto e fazer, pô-las em prática, digo eu. Está sem som, Tito. Já faltava hoje.
Exatamente, para variar, estou sem som. E acho que os nossos convidados nesta última ação, todos eles de alguma forma tocaram nesse aspecto da importância do envolvimento parental, não numa perspectiva policial e de policiamento, não é? Mas numa perspectiva genuína do envolvimento e da utilização das tecnologias com os filhos. Estamos mesmo a chegar ao fim. Antes de encerrar as duas questões práticas habituais, não é? Dizer que haverá direitos a certificados. O link para os pedidos dos certificados será disponibilizado, entretanto. Estejam atentos aos vossos e-mails durante a próxima semana. E depois também um outro aspecto, que é a vossa opinião, quem nos está a acompanhar e a ver, importa para nós. E nesse sentido pedimos que nos deem a vossa opinião sobre esta sessão, seguindo o link que iremos disponibilizar nos comentários. Não queríamos encerrar esta quarta sessão com uma gravação. Foi que, infelizmente, por questões de agenda dos nossos convidados de hoje e da sessão anterior com o Ricardo Quaresma, a isso forçaram. Assim pensámos e ok, então vamos fazer uma festa de encerramento amanhã, não é verdade, Cristiano?
Pois é. Nós percebemos que algumas das pessoas comentaram, e até na própria avaliação, que foi pena não ter sido indireto a sessão com o Ricardo Quaresma, mas não foi possível. E esta hoje também não foi possível ser indireto por indisponibilidade da agenda de alguns dos oradores que tivemos hoje, não é? E nós não queríamos terminar assim, não queríamos terminar com uma gravação. Então decidimos, pronto, pensámos assim, tipo, à última da hora, e pá, vamos fazer uma festa de encerramento, bora lá, vamos juntar aqui as pessoas, vamos estar todos aqui no Zoom, câmaras abertas, quem quiser, falar connosco, tirar as suas dúvidas, colocar as suas questões, partilhar aquilo que pensa também sobre este assunto, porque eu acredito que depois de um mês, quem nos está aqui a seguir também tem alguma coisa a dizer sobre isto. Venham conversar connosco, vamos estar aqui também 1h30, com o tempo que for necessário, a conversar sobre estas temáticas. Infelizmente a Sónia não vai poder estar connosco, isto foi decidido à última da hora e ela já tinha compromissos, o que é muita pena mesmo, Sónia, mas mesmo assim vamos estar aqui a conversar. Portanto, apareçam, os links vão seguir para esta festa, vão seguir amanhã de manhã, terça-feira de manhã, como é óbvio, não é? Portanto, venham connosco. E prestem lá atenção no e-mail, que vamos querer fazer um brinde com vocês no final, portanto vamos querer que tragam aqui um copo do que vocês mais gostam, seja água, sumo, chá, champanhe, vinho do Porto, o que seja. Vamos aqui fechar isto em grande porque merecemos todos. Nós temos pessoas que vieram aqui, Tito, connosco, todas as sessões. Há nomes que nós vimos aqui, todas as sessões estiveram também aqui connosco. E se nós estamos deste lado aqui e sabemos que isto custa, quem está do lado de lá também não é fácil estar aqui todas as sessões. E assim, de repente, parece que eu ia vendo o nome das pessoas comentando boa noite, e eu era assim, ai, olha, está cá outra vez, olha, está cá, olha, outra vez. E parece que de repente nós já conhecemos assim um bocadinho aquelas pessoas só pelo nome, só por estarem aqui connosco. Epá, vamos ver as vossas caras, vamos conversar uns com os outros, apareçam. Acho que vai ser interessante, apareçam.
É isso. E também de representantes que vimos do mesmo agrupamento de escolas. Havia agrupamentos de escolas que tinham 2 e 3 pessoas a seguir-nos, o que achamos fenomenal e espetacular. Adorámos quando nos comentários nos dizem agrupamento de não sei de quê, escola de não sei de que mais. É importante, de facto, nós vermos até onde é que conseguimos chegar, e isso é gratificante saber isso, não é? Também sabe.
Mesmo. Pois é, mas vamos fechar, não é?
Sónia, não sei se queres dizer algumas palavras finais.
Quero dizer que tenho muita pena de faltar a festas e a brindes.
Podes arranjar sempre ali uma janelinha de 1 minuto ou 2, fazer um tchim-tchim connosco.
Faço um tchim-tchim. Vou escolher a minha bebida para amanhã, ver se consigo entrar e fazer um tchim-tchim. Talvez, logo se vê. Mas desejo-vos a todos, agradeço muito, muito a participação e o acompanhamento de tantos que foram de facto fiéis na entrada, que nós íamos vendo, que já íamos conhecendo, e um ótimo ano. Obrigada.
É isso.
É isso, obrigada a todos e vemo-nos amanhã nós, não é? Tito.
É isso. Só agradecer aos nossos patrocinadores, portanto à Google e à associação.pt, que foram os patrocinadores desta quarta edição da Global StopCyberbullying Telesummit. Agradecer também aos nossos media partners, o Grupo Cofina, através do jornal Correio da Manhã e do canal de televisão CMTV, e do programa que tem Mais Escola, Melhor Família, que tivemos connosco também o Dr. Paulo Sargento a fazer uma ação e a dar informação sobre o programa, e ao Agarrados à Net, o programa que juntamente com o Cristiano Miranda levamos a efeito e que trata também o tema do cyberbullying. E até amanhã para a festa de encerramento, E vamos ver se agora, contrariamente ao que aconteceu com o início desta sessão, eu consigo pôr o vídeo a correr como deve ser, com som que parece que não aconteceu no início. Então, vamos minimizar tudo. Até amanhã.